I am all the way up in Minnesota. If you can't tell by my little accent, whenever I say the O's, it's really going to be pronounced a little bit too much. So if I get too bad, just let me know. But born and raised here, I played all sorts of sports throughout high school. Then when I went to college, I just had all this free time. I had absolutely no idea what I was going to do with myself. I'd always been in shape, but like those high school workouts where it's let's go do lat pull downs, for 15 minutes with six other guys. And you're like, yeah, coach, we're really going to take off here. So I really started to get in shape in college. And I mean, my workouts were just absolutely insane. We're talking like a 4 mile run just for a warm up and then working out for like 2 hours and then just going and eating, 5 or 6 hamburgers in the cafeteria. Basically, I had that young person metabolism where I could get away with it, but that's really what I focused on. And then I purposely like scheduled my classes where it was, I think noon was the earliest I ever did just because I had to sleep and get all that stuff figured out. And I was planning on competing, but then I found out, as a lot of people do, that damn nutrition where it's like I gotta have my beer and my hot dogs and my hamburgers. I went on prep in solidarity with a friend of mine, and I told him ahead of time, look, I don't even think I'm gonna be able to step on stage. This is just to see how long my willpower lasts before this happens. So about 5 weeks into the prep, I sent him a video of me eating 3 of those long Costco hot dogs, saying, best of luck as you continue on your journey, but I'm gonna have to bow out. Now, I don't recommend anyone eat those 3 Costco hot dogs because it was bad. I'm not gonna go into details, but just warning ahead of time, do not do that. But so yeah, and then I'd always been working out, even after college, and graduated, what was it, January of 2018, and then in June of 2018, I thought, hey, I start a podcast. That seems like that would be simple enough. How little I knew back then. So I started with up and coming bands, musicians, and after about 50 of those, I thought, like, hey, all these health and fitness people that have been, following on Instagram for years, I should have some of them come on and share their journey, and then it just sort of took off from there. And yeah, I honestly had no idea what I was doing at the first time that I talked to people, and it's just been growing, and I just love having people on and sharing their stories. And it's just fascinating how much you can really connect with people and talk to people from all different places. I mean, I'm having someone from the UK on tomorrow, and then I'll talk to an Aussie, sometime next week. It's fascinating what this all can be. And I just love bringing awareness to the sport, especially the female side of it, because the men get enough coverage as it is. We can all agree on that. The females rarely get any coverage at all. And yeah, I just like promoting that and showing people like, hey, you can do this a healthy and positive way, and you don't have to go to the extremes that a lot of people do, which is something that I pivoted for, at least in the last couple of years, and just realized that like, hey, I want to promote a little bit more healthier side of the sport. So yeah, I just love having people on and talking. And as you can tell, I could talk, we could do this for 10 hours basically, but yeah, that's the backstory there. And I will say, the first time that someone said that like you're giving a platform for people, I thought they were crazy. And I was like, no, no, I'm not. Are you kidding me? I'm just letting people talk and share their stories. And the more and more that I realized, because like I said, I got started in 2018, and back then there was maybe one other podcast that really did this. Like there was, and it wasn't even that big. So like there was nothing there. And then I just to be able to see in the almost 6 years of growth, now there's, hundreds of channels that cover this. Just it's so incredible. And yeah, there's definitely voices that need to be heard. And I love that you talked about humanizing these competitors as well, because so many people that just think, oh, these are just some, crazy freaks that go and train obsessively and do all this stuff. And it's like, no, when you really get down and talk to them and just realize they're just average human beings. Sure, their willpower is greater than almost anyone on this planet to be able to go through what they go through. I always give them that credit where it's like your willpower is insane. Just give me 1% of it and I'll be able to tackle my day with so much more ease. But yeah, it's just, I love just having that first conversation with someone. And then people just go out there and just be like, yeah, oh, they're a mom of three that, works a regular steady job. And then they compete on top of that. It's not just the person that lives obsessively in the gym. Now, granted, I will say there are those stereotypes out there. I try to avoid them, but every once in a while I'll get one of those on where I just want to pull them aside and be like, hey, you realize that you are doing so much damage to this lifestyle because you are literally the walking stereotype of what everyone thinks. But I always have fun with those people. But yeah, it's just, about spreading the sport, because let's be honest, we're not going to be millionaires off of doing this. I do this, out of the goodness of my heart. I'm the rare case where I really don't care if anyone listens at all. I've made this point a million times. I've even lost fans just by telling people, it's like, I don't care if you watch my stuff or not. I just get the joy out of knowing that I got to talk to people and, spread their stuff.
Are you a personal trainer, online fitness coach, or gym owner on the verge of burnout? Are you wanting to grow your fitness business but can't add more hours to your hectic schedule? Introducing Trainer Revenue Multiplier, the premier wealth creation system for fitness professionals that helps you earn more and work less. Visit www.trainerrevenuemultiplier.com today to schedule your free business accelerator session. If you're serious about taking your business to the next level, schedule your call today.
People can tell whether you're being authentic or not. I can tell within usually about a minute of watching someone's podcast if they're doing it just for the money or if they're doing it because of their general appreciation and their love of it. And granted, you should probably be doing it for both, honestly, if you're doing like a really, a well-known topic that you could make money off of it. But when you're doing something like this, yeah, you just definitely need to present yourself as authentic and not just present yourself as someone who's just doing this just to, for the money or for anything like that. Because a lot of people, especially in this lifestyle that people do, they can sniff out those people almost immediately because they deal with that on a daily basis. So yeah, just be authentic and just realize that, like, yeah, it's a growing process. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. So like when you were getting started in 2020, in July of 2020, I was about to shut down because I was just like, okay, this is ridiculous. I probably had like 1,000 subscribers at that point. Just was each video was probably getting, like 100 views maybe. But then that damn Andrea Shaw, I had her on, and this is right before she won any of the Olympia titles. And then I had her do that thumbnail where she did that sidearm, and that video got like 250,000 views. It still gets like 1,000 views a week for me, basically. But and then that's the one that convinced me, like, oh, I'll keep doing this. So you never know when you're gonna strike something that might go off. And then I think I was gaining like 500 subscribers a month at that point, and it's gotten slower down now. But like I said again, like I honestly, once it got to like 2022, I was like, I really don't care, how many people watch this or view this, because I know that the ones that do are the ones that take genuine care, and they value what I do. So, and that's really all that matters to me, is that that I have maybe even if it's just a handful of people that really appreciate what you do. Unless you're talking to like celebrities or doing anything like that, like that's really the only thing that you can really get from this lifestyle. Because yeah, there have been guys that have put millions of dollars into their podcasts, and they get less coverage than a lot of the stuff that I do, which I too, like yourself, find absolutely hilarious. And I laugh. I don't laugh in their face, but like deep down, I'm just like, oh my God, like guys, you could have bought a house with that money. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. When I first got started, I was doing it. I wasn't doing it for the money, but I was doing it with thinking that, like, hey, maybe if I put a year or two into this, I might be able to, make some decent money out of it. But it's like I make like $200 a month on YouTube, and then I make like maybe 100 on Patreon. So this is like, let's do the math here, like $3,600 I probably make a year doing this. So, and that's with 10,500 subscribers on YouTube, and then like 10,000 followers on Instagram. So it's like, unless you're in the millions, basically, you're not gonna make. I mean, there are some people that do 100,000, and they do exclusive content for fans and all that stuff. But I only do this all by myself. I don't have the time to really do any of that. If someone else came around and helped me out with it, like, it would be so much easier, and I would be forever grateful. But I am way too much of a perfectionist, where I'm always one of those, like, you got to do everything yourself if you want it done right. Because I mean, editing alone, like you talked about how this is more than just that. Editing alone is, I hate more than anything, but I have to do it because to me it has to look perfect. Like if you're talking, let's say your voice glitches for like 5 seconds, even I like flinch a little bit on this other side because I'm like, oh God, there it is. But I've gotten to a point now where I've realized that like people don't really care that much if like your audio might be a tad bit off for a second. It took me so long to realize that, which is what another thing that I'd love to tell people getting started on their podcast is that the stuff that you think is going to be like an annoyance to the people listening to it rarely is, unless there's like a dog barking in the background or any other stuff like that. Like if there's like a little glitch, people are so used to seeing that, and they know because you're doing it live and you're doing it, over Skype or Zoom or whatever you're using. So just be aware of the fact that every mistake that's going to be out there, people are not going to criticize. And if they do, they're idiots. Like, let's be honest, because like it took me until even like last year where I was just taking, hours upon hours of editing stuff that like you wouldn't even tell the difference if you were a viewer doing that. And it just drove me crazy. So I will tell people, just realize that nothing's going to ever come out perfect. I've never done a perfect podcast, and I probably never will. And just realize that you are going to make mistakes, and just learn and grow from those mistakes. And things are going to happen. You might have that episode that really, really takes off, and then you might be followed by 5 episodes that don't. And it's just, you just got to really, and I will say everything of mine that ever went viral and got like, like let's say like 50,000 views, or like on Instagram got like, I just had one that passed like 250,000, views on it. Every single one of them, I was not planning on it. I didn't think that would be the one. So it's normally the ones, at least for me, the ones that you don't think are going to take off are the ones that take off. And then the ones that you take such a long time and like, oh, I'm going to send this to so many people and hopefully they repost it too. It's like, those are the ones that, I mean, maybe once out of like the 15 times I've tried that has that actually result in it. So it just goes to show with that algorithm. And I'd love to know who controls that algorithm, because dear God, especially with Instagram now, where it's like you can't even do like reels really anymore. And especially if you don't post like original content, and people don't want to see this face on photos on my Instagram page. So, I gotta find a way to figure that out. But like, I've been getting sick and tired of Instagram, if I'm being completely honest, because they have completely changed everything. And it's going to be fascinating what that comes to be. How have you been dealing with the whole Instagram sort of changing its format? Because I know like you post clips of this podcast, which is good because like it's original content, but have you struggled at all with, the recent changes that they've been making? out of all the collaboration posts that I've made, the one that didn't get accepted by the other person via collaboration has 3 times the views of all the other ones that I've ever actually got collabs on. So it's just, where do you fall on just like knowing when to make sure that the audience knows that like you shouldn't be emulating these people's lives to an extent, because they do put their bodies through so much and they aren't at their healthiest when they go on stage. That's why I always like to tell people that like be like, I want to be a bodybuilder, and I say, first of all, talk to a competitor. And the thing that I love about competitors is that they will be, if you talk to them in person, and let's say not on like a record line or anything like that, they will be upfront with you about anything that you want to know. Most of the time, they will tell you about all the stuff that goes around, that goes on, and all the stuff that you really need to know before you step on stage. So I always tell people that. But like, how important is it for you too to also like spread that message of like, hey, this is not the healthiest lifestyle, honestly, but it's just it's all, but it's something that should be, appreciated because of what they do and what they're able to achieve.
Are you a personal trainer who wants to scale and grow your business online? Have you been coaching online for years, yet don't know how to incorporate online into your current business model? Introducing Trainer Revenue Multiplier, the premier wealth creation system for fitness professionals that helps you earn more and work less. Visit www.trainerrevenuemultiplier.com today to schedule your free business accelerator session. If you're serious about taking your business to the next level, schedule your call today. I think to me, it's like recognizing that this is a sport. I think that's the biggest thing. And the athletes are hopefully there because they like what they do. They like the aesthetic that they have. But at the end of the day, they're also there to participate in the sport and to meet requirements set by the sport. So it's not necessarily that they're getting on stage to look like this because they love it exactly the way it is. But I also know that like, yeah, okay, that's what they look like on stage. And they can be proud of that look because they put a lot of effort and energy and time and even money into that look. But they may not want to be seen as a bodybuilder or looked at as a bodybuilder, or view themselves as like that kind of physique forever for the whole year, from prepped off season, etc. Like their body really, in some ways, and this kind of goes back to what you're talking about, like it really is only looking like what it looks like, what most people think of as a bodybuilder for such a short period of time.
Most of these competitors, or I wouldn't say most, but probably a little bit over 50%, don't even like the look that they go on stage, but they do it just because that's the regulation. And they say, like, hey, this is what we want to see. And that's just like with a lot of sports too, where it's like, I've met volleyball players that don't like the volleyball outfit. It's way too tight, especially for women. I've met, athletes from other sports that might not like the requirements, but, because they are so competitive and that they love the journey and the lifestyle, that they're willing to do it. Because so many people do just see that end result on stage. And again, I love you for saying that, like, this is not what they're going to look like 24/7, which is so, the amount of times that I've had to tell people that that is not the case. It's, if I had a dime for every single time, that's just like, no, that's the look they present on stage. Off stage, even a week later, they're not going to look just like that, because so many people just see that product on stage and then they don't realize that that is the culmination of, restricting yourself with doing insane amounts of cardio and just a lot of other things. But so, and I will say, one of the funniest things is whenever I see an off-season bodybuilder in the gym, I'll just walk up to him and be like, hey, do you even like train anymore? Like, what's going on? I'll just give them that little joke, just, getting there. Again, it's the bodybuilders are some of the nicest people that you ever meet, which is another thing that I love about humanizing them, is because most people just assume that they're like, just because of the way that they look. There's always been that assertion in movies and other types of media, like, oh, they're just mean, grumpy people. And once you really get to start talking to them, you're like, no, they're some of the nicest people on the planet, because, if they, and I think it's mainly because of the community that they have, where it's like, it's joint suffering. You're going to suffer if you go on your prep and do stuff, where it's like, if you recognize someone else that's willing to do that, it just gains a huge amount of respect for them. But yeah, on your point, yeah, I do really think that, we really need to talk more about, like the health side of it too, because especially with TikTok and all these things taking off, and competitors are getting younger and younger as the years go on. I mean, when I first started this even 6 years ago, there was rarely any 18, 19-year-olds. And now it's, you see hundreds of them on TikTok, and you're just like, first of all, I couldn't imagine, really competing in college. Because like I said, I was having a little bit too much fun in college. I could not imagine myself, having that mind space to go and compete. So more power to them. But it's like, dear God, I don't get that myself. But just, and as you've been doing this, more and more, has there been a common trope that you've really seen with the guests that you have on? Because a lot of them, with like their backstories, I find that like a lot of them fall into similar categories of what really got them into the sport.
That's interesting you say that. For what usually gets people into it, I think is a either like a desire to continue their athletic journeys. They're very athletic. Maybe it's track or basketball or volley. High level high school or college athletes, or it's that person that's like, oh man, I got to get back into shape, and then they use bodybuilding as the that catalyst or that pressure. I always say like bodybuilders all step on stage and look very similar, but the way and the routes that they get there are so different. I actually kind of had a similar question for you, like, getting to talk to all these different competitors. You mentioned, an Olympian winner, multi-time Olympian winner, pre-Olympia wins. Like when you get to do that, I've actually thought about this before in my own, guest list, if you will. Like, is that person that is on their first show or second show, like, are they going to be Mr. or Miss Olympia in some category in, 4 or 5 years? And I think it's really fascinating that you kind of have that actual experience. I mean, what was that like for you?
I mean, I could tell basically within a couple minutes of talking to her, like, yeah, she's going to win the Olympia just because. And first of all, I really had not even heard of her until like a month before when I saw her Instagram page and then I contacted her. Like, I had no idea who she was. And then just through talking to her, I was like, holy crap. Like, and then that was the year I think that like Iris Kyle didn't compete or there was something like my memory's not that good. But then when she first won it, I was like, oh, okay, she's the new like Iris Kyle or Linda Murray. But yeah, I could tell within about 5 minutes of having her on that like, holy crap, this is an Olympia winner. And then I've had other ones too where it's like right before they win their pro card or right before. But Andrea Shaw was definitely one where it was like right before an Olympia victory. But yeah, other Olympians that I have on or like right before they compete in the Olympia, you can I don't know. I can tell it's not 100% for me, but there are times where you can definitely tell just based on the way someone looks and just from talking to them, you can always tell from the ones that have just that insane like Michael Jordan-esque desire that you can tell just from talking to them like okay, this person is a legit psychopath but in a good way. Like they have that mindset that you need to have if you want to be at the higher echelons of this sport. But then there's also, the hobby ones that I enjoy a lot. But I will say the guests that I enjoy the most are this 55 or 60 plus ones because to be able to maintain that especially at that age and those are the most inspiring ones for me. And if I can inspire just one person, just to say like, what's your excuse? And I'll even plug one guest specifically, Susie Hanahan. I had her on like a couple of weeks ago, maybe like a month ago, and she has I don't know what the thing is, but like her left hand, it's almost like a stump, but then she still like modifies her workouts and she's able to find ways to get in shape. And those are the guests that I honestly, treasure the most because just to prove to people, it's like there's not that really many excuses. Now, again, some people do have valid excuses, and that works for them. But for the majority of people, it's like just showing that. And anytime I get and it's happened a couple dozen times where I've gotten emails or people have messaged me saying like, "Hey, your podcast inspired me to get in shape," and that's, that could beat any million viewed episode for me, honestly, in my opinion, just that one person. But yeah, but to answer your question, yeah, just talking to those people right before ahead of time, I can tell, I'd say probably like 75% of the time. And then other ones, I mean, it all just depends on show day as well. Cause you might talk to someone who looks really great and you're talking to them like 3 days out of a show, but then they get their water wrong or they do something else wrong. And then they just look a little bit bloated on stage and, you can tell. But yeah, normally it's fascinating. And what would you say is like your first aha guess where you're like, oh my God, like I'm actually talking to someone that's like really high up in the industry that's like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this.
Jason Gardner.
Oh,
And
okay. Yep.
he was actually on Jocko's podcast, and I reached out to him, and he's actually been on twice. And that was like one of my very, very, very first guests, like probably 20, 25 episodes in, something like that. And I was just like, holy crap, this guy has been on like one of the biggest podcasts in the world, is a part of like the Navy SEAL. Like it blew my mind. Like this guy's on my podcast. And then probably within the sport of bodybuilding, I even hate to like without looking at a full like list, I hate to
Yeah.
do that because I know I'm going to miss someone. But just a few of the big ones, I would say like Whitney Jones that recently just came on. Huge and incredible person in the bodybuilding industry. But there's just like so many people that really, when I look at it, like it's so cool. Like why did they come on the podcast? Like it's really great that they did, but what made them say yes to me? Really cool that I got to make all these connections just through the podcast.
I've gotten way too familiar with time zones than I really should be, honestly, where I could, blindfolded tell you when that country is going to be at what time. And it's gotten to that point for me, honestly, too. But yeah, I mean, honestly, just to go back to the one that I thought that I was like, oh my God, this is great. Are you a fan of Entourage? Have you seen Entourage?
I know it, but I'm not really big in it.
So this was probably like, I don't know, like 100 or so in, and I got not even one of the main persons, but a girl that was in an episode where she played one of the main characters' girlfriends for like an episode, and I was like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. So that was my moment where I thought that. But I honestly, too, even to this day, I have such low self-esteem sometimes where I'm just like, I feel like I'm wasting this person's time by having them come on and talk to me, honestly. Like if they're, at the upper echelon, I still even think that, even though like a lot of people say, it's like, no, you put out such great stuff and you talk to so many people. I still, every once in a while I'll have one guest on where I'm like, I'm really wasting this person's time, honestly. Like, and this is before we even have a conversation. Then that turns out to be a great podcast. But like even before, it's like, why are they even agreeing to come on with me? Like that, it's just like it dumbfounds me sometimes. And even with the lower, the guests that might not have a following, I still sometimes have that too. I was like, why are these people keep saying yes to me? Like, don't they like just see that and just be like, okay, it just fascinates me. We're like, I don't understand why people enjoy it, honestly. Well, I won't say it like that, but I'll say like I don't understand why people enjoy it as much as they do, honestly. Where it's like I enjoy talking to the guests and I enjoy doing that, but I have never really been a person that like enjoys listening to other people unless it's like Joe Rogan and he'll have like another comedian on or like Theo Vaughn or something like that. But otherwise, like, yeah, I've had people, it's like, let's listen to your podcast. And I was like, no, I will kill you. I don't want to listen to my podcast with you. Cause first of all, I'll pick everything apart that I say. Like, I'll be like, oh, I should have said something like different like that. I tried that once with family members when I had a sleep specialist on to talk about sleep. This is like one of my first early ones too. And even like 5 minutes into watching, I was like, okay, I can't watch this anymore. This is ridiculous. But do you find that it's, especially with you when it comes to talking to people, do you ever how do you deal with the fact that like you're never gonna like I said before like you're never gonna do a perfect episode where it's like you are gonna mess up, you are gonna do some stuff, and that just comes with doing a podcast.
I think for me, it just comes down to like understanding that it is just a conversation. Like we might put this up under the name of the Weight Room Podcast or whatever podcast that someone's recording under. But at the end of the day, like this is just two people talking, and there's never been a conversation that I've had to where it's been, especially one that's been an hour long or whatever, to where someone didn't like say the wrong word or stumble on a word or ask a question the wrong way or blank out on what they were talking about, or like I've never had a conversation that long where something weird didn't happen. So even though I'm very much the same way you are in regards to I don't want to go back and listen to my episodes, sometimes I will on very low volume. I don't know why that makes me more comfortable doing it, but
Yes,
I will.
yes.
I don't know if that's psychological, but I'll go back and listen like almost semi distracted, and I can, I'm good with it. And I think part of that too is like I've had the conversation, I've now edited the conversation for, an hour and 2 hours, whatever it takes. And so past that point, like I know what's going to be said. I don't need to go back and listen to it anyway. But occasionally I will. Like I said, it's something about having that low volume there that makes me like not as kind of cringy on what I'm saying.
Well, like what I do normally is if I really enjoy the conversation, I'll just listen to the guest audio and I'll have my audio turned completely off when it gets editing, and then I'll just listen to that because I know what I said, and based off their answer, I'll be like, oh, that's when I asked this question because I do have a formula down because I am so busy where I literally could not come up with a separate set of questions. Like every single question is different for every guest, so I do, like 75% of my questions are, especially for first time guests, I usually have the same questions, and that's what I encourage people to do. Also, they're starting a podcast is that find your formula, especially if you're very busy and you have a very busy schedule. Find, like let's say the same 10 questions that you can ask someone, and you don't have to do it in the same order because I still sometimes struggle with that. And then people are like, oh, yes, the same like first three questions. And it's like, well, first of all, I have a busy schedule. I don't really have, time. And even if it's a really important guest, I won't really do that much research. I'll include a few questions, but find a formula that works for you so that first of all, you know what you're going to say and do everything because I probably like the first three or four podcasts, I had no idea what I was going to say. And it was just, hey, what's up? And then we were just like, then, just a conversation developed out of that. And then also just, realize also too, yeah, like you said, it's a conversation. People are going to mess up. I too have never had a conversation that really just went away perfectly, and just being a perfectionist, it's always a, never ending struggle. But yeah, I just appreciate to talk to people and just share their journey.
This podcast is sponsored by Smoking Gun Coffee, a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to give back to those in need. Don't forget to use code TWR10 for a 10% discount at checkout. It's funny you mentioned like having the same kind of questions, and that's something that, do you find that most people ask for questions ahead of time? Because a lot of my guests won't, some will. I'd say maybe it's like 25% of people will ask for, actually probably like 50% of people are going to say, hey, what are we going to talk about? And then like half of those are going to say, can you send me specific questions? And a lot of times I don't like to send specific questions because I know that I'm probably going to be really bad at following those. And if I do follow them, then I'm in some senses going to like, I'm already going to know the questions, like the answers to the basic questions. So I'm kind of going to be bored asking those. So it's for me, I would rather just be like, hey, these are some general areas we're going to talk about. I'm not going to give you specific questions because if you say something really interesting that I didn't know about you, if we have a set of questions, then I'm going to feel bad if I do go off that list and ask you this thing, but I'm also still going to do it anyway. So then it's like, I just want to go into it as like this brand new thing. Like me and you, we didn't specifically talk about like, hey, we're going to ask each other these questions. And to me, if I do that, then I'm already dictating the conversation.
Mhm.
And to me, I don't want to do that. I want to learn something new. And to me, I can't learn something new if I'm going in with like preconceived notions of what we're going to be talking about. So, I mean, I've had conversations even recently where we'll spend over half the episode talking about the person's like career outside of bodybuilding because it's so fascinating. My two questions, I almost always start with like, just tell us a little bit about yourself because then they kind of get the ball rolling and they're going to tell me what they think's interesting about them. And then usually once we get into fitness, I just ask the general question of how did you actually get into it? And to me, those are my like two cornerstone questions. But past that, I'm just like, you know what, this is it. But before all that rambling, back to what I was asking, is it something that you find common that guests will ask you to give them questions ahead of time?
For me, well, I'll ask you first again. So when you send them like, hey, you want to come on? Do you send them like a link to a podcast that you've already done, or do you just ask them if they want to come on your podcast?
Usually I don't send them any links because especially if they don't follow me or they don't know me, then a lot of times if I get like a message with a link in it, I'm like, oh, this is going to be, sketchy. So sometimes I'll think of that ahead of time. And not to say that like that's right or wrong, but that's just my own kind of like mindset of can I
Well,
send
here's a
back?
hack for you then though, because I send a link to every time, and I probably had only about a handful of times that people have asked me for questions, because I'll just send them like a podcast, like my 200th podcast that I have saved. I have the message that I'm going to send to them. I have it copy and pasted along with that clip, and then I say, by the way, here's the link to a podcast that I've done. So if you have like, so you can just see what it's like, and so then I do that. But then yeah, I still get every once in a while I'll get like someone saying like, hey, can you send me questions? Then again, I have all those questions copy and pasted that I can just do from a file and then just do that. And then there's the general ones. But like me too, like if I find someone who's very interesting, then yeah, I'll divert the conversation for a while. Like one recently is that I had someone who was a goat farmer. Never talked to a goat farmer in my life. So we had to talk about how goats apparently love to kill themselves. Apparently, they'll find ways to try to kill themselves on goat farms. Like they're just crazy animals. And then I'll talk to someone else who, is an Australian and works with the Aboriginal people in their lives. So then we'll talk about that. And it's just, yeah, if I get a guest that and then they start talking about their story, or like if someone lived in Africa for a while at like a nature reservation, then yeah, we'll talk about that for a while, because yeah, I do understand that like a lot of people it's like, oh, it's the same stuff. But yeah, I mean, if you have your base done, I'd say that's great with the questions, but then also with asking people too. And I forgot to say this, but like with you too, it's like people don't understand. You send out maybe 100 requests to come on your show. On a good day, you might get 20 back. Like it's on a good day, you really got to have so much patience and just be ready for failure too, and be ready for people saying no, and just realize that like, hey, they might not just be saying no to you. It might just be because hey, they're busy, they have other commitments, and just don't take everything so personal. Which is I maybe struggled with that for one episode, and then I finally realized that like, hey, I can't control other people, and I can't control if what they want to do, and it's like it's a blessing to even have one person on. I just realized that myself.
Hopefully, people out there who are thinking about content or thinking about podcast or whatever it may be can gain some value from this. And I certainly know I did. So I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much for inviting me. This was great, and I appreciate what you do.
Absolutely. And if before we head out, I'm going to put all your info in the description below. But if you just want to share it before we head out, you can.
Yeah, so you can just follow me, d.d. on the spot on YouTube. You can follow me on Instagram, d.d. on the spot. I did have um Spotify, but that has been hacked like 5 times in the last like 3 years. So we're currently in the middle of hack number 5 right now. So wait a week. I change passwords every month. I don't know how it's possible, but we're in the middle of that one right now. So it might be like a week or two before I finally get that back. But yeah, you can follow me on those things. And like I said again, you don't have to follow me, everyone. Like you don't. I really, but if you want to, you want to. Just like I said, if you're gonna offer me $1, I'll take it. But it's like otherwise, whatever. But yeah, and I'll make sure to share all of your stuff with all the other people when I'll share this on my Instagram page and other things as well. But yeah, again, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
If you're tired of searching for a coach or trainer, somebody who knows what they're talking about and has experience, make sure you go check out the new Coach's Corner on weightroompodcast.com. You can find quality, qualified coaches to help you achieve your goals, whether that's in bodybuilding or just general fitness. Stop wasting time and start achieving your goals today. The link to the Coach's Corner is down in the description below.